Another one of your thrones here.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this begins to look like 100 ways to sit down, which reflects something about my lifestyle, I guess, at this point in my life. I was talking about my dad, and, I guess I feel cheated in a way. The persona that he chose for me, in relating to me, was so forbidding and dry and moralistic and pressure-ridden, and it's just like he hardly ever talked to me without it, wanting to know whether I'd practiced my lesson or had I read any dirty books or had I come home directly from school every night. I mean, it was just constantly trying to perfect me, and in ways that he was so obvious that he wasn't perfect. And yet every once in a while I would get a glimpse of a person that I could have related to and enjoyed communicating with. But he chose never to show those things to me. For example, one of the men he used to talk to when he was sitting down on the street was Mr. Head, who lived right across the street from us, Nephi Head. And Mr. Head was quite the character. And I remember going over to his place with Dad one day, and Nephi Head said, "Clive, have you heard this joke?" And he proceeded to tell an incredibly filthy joke, which I understood perfectly and I thought was funny, but I kept looking at my dad to see how he was reacting, expecting him to say something like, "You shouldn't talk that way, blah, blah, blah." But he laughed uneasily, and he kept looking at me to see what my reaction was. And I realized that this is how he related to Nephi Head, that they told each other dirty jokes. And that's something that, hey, what teenage kid wouldn't enjoy sharing with his dad? But he never, ever shared that with me. And it's always like he felt like he had to show some superior being as an example so that I would achieve my potential and not do something immoral or whatever. There was a time I remember at a Christmas dinner, my dad had an aunt, or a sister, my aunt, that was a real character. I mean, she was really outspoken.
What was her name?
Gladys, Aunt Gladys. And she had her husband was the same. They were a really outrageous couple. They taught dancing in the town, and they were good. They really danced beautifully. And Gladys used to tease Dad a lot. And I remember that one of the filthiest jokes I ever heard in my dad's company, she told, is it okay if I tell it at this point?
Oh, sure.
Okay, Aunt Gladys is...
if you're under 18, you must now turn off your computer.
Turn it off. Okay, Aunt Gladys, she says, "Clive, did you know that southern Alberta has a unique geographical feature that nowhere in the world will you find?" And Dad said, No. And he said, she said, "Well, it has to do with the rivers. There are 3 rivers down here. There's the St. Mary's River, and there's the Belly River, and the Old Man River." And she said the unique geographical feature is that the Old Man enters the St. Mary just below the Belly. And I was just astonished that Dad didn't get up and walk out or something. I mean, you know, Dad would have given me a whipping if he ever heard me tell a joke like that. And he laughed uneasily, and he didn't know what to do about it. Anyway, again, it showed me that there was a different man that other people knew, and that all those days sitting down on Main Street, they weren't discussing the gospel. Thank God.
You told me one time that your dad would sit there in his vehicle waiting for people to.
Oh yeah. Well, Dad was one of those talkers that didn't know when to quit, and he would talk sometimes. And yeah, I'd noticed a few times people would. Dad would try to capture them. You know, he'd be sitting there looking for a buddy to talk to, and people would back off. You know, while they're talking to him, making clear by their body language that they didn't want to get trapped again. Which is kind of sad in a way when you think about it. But oh well, that's what salesmen do. They talk to people, and that's probably why he was interested in being a salesperson, and probably why he wasn't more successful. I think he used to waste a lot of time visiting people, and then he'd find somebody friendly who would listen to him.
He said, I don't want your Tupperware or your potty mouth. Yeah?
Yeah, right. I remember one of the mysteries that occurred. Dad got a Christmas present, and it was a pair of socks, and it was addressed to Dad, to Clive, from Daisy. And Dad claimed not to know who Daisy was. And I had a feeling my mom didn't believe him.
Is that right?
She although she chose to treat it in a teasing kind of way. He may not have known who it was, but I mean, you know, when you think about it, who named Daisy is going to send you a pair of socks that you don't know? And they were the right size. That mom kept pointing that out. That's what she couldn't understand, is how did she know what size?
They weren't used socks?
I know.
She kept the underwear and sent them back to socks, I guess.
Well, we won't talk about the underwear.
Okay, I stopped.